Hi, welcome to Money Matters TV. My name's Tawadros, and I am your host today. My co-host today is Kelly Stewart. It's really nice to see you, and I know your company is called The Positive Business.
Yes.
I looked it up. Very fascinating. Why don't you tell me about it?
Sure, absolutely. The Positive Business was born from a desire to help current business owners and emerging business leaders understand that they can do well by doing good in business. And so how I go about doing that is to help them first define what good means. It's a nebulous term, and in some cases it's about making an impact, and in some cases in society, or the planet, and in some cases it's just even about improving their own business relationships that they have with their employees, with their clients, with their suppliers and vendors that lead oftentimes then to making a positive impact in society and on the planet. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
What made you start it?
I had a marketing background, and there were a lot of times when I had opportunities to talk with business leaders about their companies. And because we all operate in this very transparent market now, made possible through the internet and social media, I feel very strongly that this notion of a brand image is really kind of giving way to brand reality. When people can go online and see reviews written by current and former employees on job posting sites, when people can get reviews online just through the different services that offer that, they're looking for that connection to what the company is saying about itself in terms of what it says on its website or in its marketing materials. And when that doesn't exist, there's kind of a breakdown in trust. And I always wanted to help my clients earn their trust through being transparent. So that's really what started me with it, and I did a lot of research. I'm a learner, I'm a lifelong learner, and so I did a lot of research into organizations, nonprofit organizations that help to foster these types of positive business practices.
So what I find interesting is I've been listening to a lot of that podcast, How I Built This, and a lot of the conversations do touch on corporate culture.
Right.
And one of the ones I listened to not too long ago, well, actually the one I listened to today was the guy that founded Home Depot.
Okay.
Him and his business partner, and they talked about how they started their first store, and they had never documented their culture and how they treat customers, how they treat employees, and what their goals are. And as they started to expand, they realized the one partner said to the other one, we need to write this down. Because if we don't write it down, we're not going to be able to express it to the other locations. So you help people develop their culture?
Culture, yes, that's one aspect of it. Any really of their company functions. So we look at finance, we look at how onerous are their contracts, right? Are they one-sided contracts? Are they fair and flexible? Because that's the type of business environment we all work in. Things change on a regular basis. We look at operations. How are things being done in terms of waste reduction programs? Are there unnecessary processes that might be creating drag on the culture, and just no one has gone and asked someone, hey, why are we doing this, right? And so we look at that, and we look at sales and marketing, and also how are you treating people, all of the people essential to your success? Because one of the hallmarks of a positive business is having a stakeholder, a mentality that there are shareholders and investors who are certainly important to the company's success, but there are also clients and partners and vendors and suppliers and bankers and community neighbors, depending on where your office or building is located, and society at large, that you could be impacting, and you could be impacting them in a positive way. So what processes will help you get there?
I feel like it's such a big shift from the old culture. When I started my career, your boss told you what to do, you did it.
Absolutely.
You didn't ask questions.
Right.
And now we're in this collaborative environment.
Yes.
Where the structures are a lot flatter. And I think it's for people that grew up and came up in that old mentality, it's a really difficult thing to shift that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't it be, right? We're talking decades of this, really what started out as command and control leadership, taken literally off the battlefield, which is where for a lot of business leaders, it was the only leadership training program that they had. And even if you look at it into the 50s and 60s, that was still very prevalent, and it worked well. Right?
And the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right, exactly. In the 50s and 60s, though, barriers to entry were still very high, so competitors were not flooding the market, and you had a lot of predictability, right? Things were stable. Technology didn't change as much as it does. What technology? The typewriter was not changing every year. They weren't coming out with a new model of typewriter. So it was more important to have the kind of rote processes that led to a predictable outcome. But in come the 80s, 90s, the technology is changing. We've got the information superhighway, we've got globalization, we've got a service-based economy, and now we need more transformative leadership. And I think that is what we're seeing not only in a lot of the new companies that are starting up, who are kind of pre-wired for this type of thinking based on what their school experience was, their business school experience, even just working in teams in school. So I think that's a big part of this, because when I was in school, if I collaborated with you, that was called cheating, right? And when students are in school today, they are actually encouraged to collaborate with others and to draw on each other's strengths and bring out the best in their team. Well,
So
they're
do you
bringing that
train
into
people?
their businesses.
Do you train leaders to?
I consult with them, and I have these conversations with them and talk about how this is why these things are changing, and these are things that you can do as a business practice. So authentic leadership, I'll use that as one example. That's kind of a squishy term, right? People don't always understand what that means, and it's really more about your character, right? Not what you do, but like who you are, and then how do you bring that into the organization as a business practice? There's volumes of research on all of that out there that's really exciting, but it's really about understanding, like any other business initiative, what is it that you want to accomplish? So you want to set those goals. Maybe that's you want to improve employee retention. Okay, great. And then through the practice of authentic leadership, telling stories. So storytelling is a very good, honest stories, but that's a very good way of bringing about authentic leadership, admitting your mistakes, being honest, all of those good things. You bring that authentic leadership to bear in those areas of your company that you feel will impact and improve employee retention.
Do you
And then
help
measure
them
it.
set those things?
I do. I help them set that up. I help them identify what the metrics would be. What are we going to capture? What's already happening? What's your current turnover rate? And what metrics do we need to capture to make sure that authentic leadership is working? And then I'll point them to other resources. So I am kind of like a clearinghouse, if you think of it that way. There are many other experts in a lot of other areas, and I bring them in as I need to help a client in a specific area.
So if I were to bring you into my organization, how do you start? Like, I say, I feel like the culture's good, it could use some improvement. I'm not sure what else you can do for me.
Sure. First question I'm going to ask you is why? Is it because it's just your mindset? It's just part of how you want to run your business. There's a way to take this from where we are now, which is good, and we want to make it better. Is it what you're saying? We're having a hard time attracting and retaining employees. So it's more like company driven. There's something in here and we're not quite sure what it is, but we want to figure it out. Or is it your market is asking for that? Lots of companies that I was talking to, even several years ago, they were having a harder time answering RFPs because they were getting asked questions that they'd never been asked before around environmental standards, around workforce, around diversity, right? So what are those drivers that brought you to ask me in that day? And that starts to reveal almost on its own some priority areas that would become strategic in nature, that we could work with so that we can connect the line, the dotted line to the strategy, and bonus, if it's something that's really helping to make a more positive impact, if what you're saying is we want a stellar culture, right? We want to go from literally from good to great, or we want to go from great to phenomenal, right? Then we'll work on what does that look like. We'll add on to the good things that you're already doing. And that's really, it's about first just kind of discovering the positive core, what's already happening, and how do we build on it from there.
Does it take a long time to implement a program? I mean, I know it depends on, but if it's a culture change for a small team, is that something that
That can happen faster. Every organization is so unique. That's the beautiful thing about it, right? Because it's one thing to say, we're accountants, or, we're public relations people, right? Like there are clusters, there's these industries, but it's that unique organization that is the competitive advantage, right? It's the organization's individual energy, and that's what we're trying to pull out in all of this. So what you and I may talk about may be different than what I talk with somebody else about.
It's interesting, I heard this, and let's say I'm 99.999% certain I'm accurate.
Okay, I'll take it.
The founder of Zappos had a different company he'd started before that.
Okay.
And that company went so off the rails in terms of culture that he actually sold it. It was a hugely successful company. I can't remember which one it was.
Okay.
But it was a tech company, and he sold it because he didn't think he could recover the culture. So when he founded Zappos, he was very intentional about the values, the communication, who he hired, how he trained them. It's fascinating.
You hit on, I think, one of the biggest, most important words around all of this is it's about intention, right? If the mindset isn't there, and if the intention isn't there, if this is something that a company wants to be, do well by doing, we're going to do good, right? And the intention is not authentic, it's not going to be as effective. I'll just say it that way, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually known. People will now already talk about, that's just purpose washing, or they're just greenwashing, right? So you want to really guard against that. But when the intention is there, and that's what I love about that story, almost anything is possible.
Okay.
It's like any other business initiative, right? We want to, grow by 20%. We want to cut costs, okay, and we want to make a positive impact in society, right? So for some companies, that's about being an intentional second chance employer. They're hiring people who have been incarcerated intentionally, right? Like that's part of their business plan. It looks different from other companies maybe who haven't or don't or can't for a variety of reasons.
There's a supermarket chain that does that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
So here's a question, and then I have a counter question to this gentleman's question.
Okay, awesome.
Joe, that was interesting. There's a guy, his name is Thomas Jackson, he's from Philadelphia, and he asks, what are some principles that make business successful? That is a really broad question, so maybe just give me 2 principles.
Okay. Purpose, because again, this is very broad. I could talk about a lot of things, but I would say purpose in answering the why, right? Which we all know that's a great question to answer. Why are we in business today? But in terms of how the company creates real value for others. And by that, I mean, how does the product or the service improve someone else's life, or how is it more helpful to them? And in the case of a business, same thing. How does it improve this other business, where it's more of a collaborative partnership in solving a problem than it is more of a, I've got something and let me tell you why you need it.
Okay, right? So purpose, and then
sure. The second one I think is accountability, and it ties into what we're talking about with the authentic leadership. But if a company is going to say this is what we're going to do, these are our goals, and we've laid them out for the next 6 months, 12 months, then they should track towards them, and they should be accountable for the decisions that they make in pursuit of those goals.
And in a small business, who are you accountable to? Yourself?
You're accountable to yourself, all of the people essential to your success. I have worked in companies before where they do a business briefing, and they will come out and at 3 months, 6 months, and we have a meeting. It's like a State of the Union address, and companies can share that with them. You can share that with your banker if those are your goals, and some of your goals is to get investment. You want to be able to show them we're tracking toward these goals because you want to be able to get more lending from them, and an infusion of resources. So there are a lot of different people that a small company can still be accountable to, through the lens of everyone's essential to our success.
Now here's the tough one, and I ask people questions like this all the time, and they're like, oh, there's so many, how can I answer that? As close as possible, what would you say is the number one thing a business should do that could be negative for their business? So you may be somewhere in the top 5, it doesn't have to be the number one. But what's one of the worst things you can do
to
prohibit success?
Not something positive that's
negative
that's masquerading as positive. But what are the bad habits? That's an excellent question, and it would vary. So I would say marginalizing people. I think we're in a very exciting time, I choose to view it that way, where we have so many things on the horizon that couldn't have even been imagined 40 or 50 years ago. We're talking about putting people on Mars, right? We're talking about AI. There's a lot of interesting things going on. We have a lot of environmental challenges. They talk about, food deserts and what's happening with, how will we be able to feed people? We need fresh ideas. We need original ideas. We need resourceful, inventive, creative ideas. And I think the more voices that we can have in shaping those conversations, the better ideas that we'll get from it. And I think when you marginalize someone because you feel you have all the answers, or you feel that maybe their opinion isn't as important, you're missing out on an opportunity as a business leader to at least hear the ideas.
I think knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do.
I agree. Thanks. Yeah. It was a great question. Thank you.
So I'm sure you might have questions. Here's how you're going to send them in.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS,
So I'm excited to introduce you to our guest, who's Claudia Wert from Wells Fargo Advisors. And the reason I'm excited is that I just added another person to my 401k in the office, and I overheard one of the other girls saying that my match was pretty good. Like,
that's awesome.
It's good. And I thought, it is? So I wanted to hear more about 401k investing, and thought you could start out by telling us about how you got into it.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a little bit about where I come from and my background. So I joined my father's firm, Robert Wert. It's the Wert Investment Consulting Group of Wells Fargo Advisors. It was founded in 1985, about 2 years after he graduated from the University of Chicago with an MBA. And he had moved back to Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, and started this business. And originally we started out with Wheat First Butcher Singer. And through a series of acquisitions, we're now with Wells Fargo. And so I joined the company right after we became Wells Fargo in 2013. And actually, it was my first summer internship. And I started.
Was it weird working for your dad?
Oh no, actually, my dad and my mom are like my best friends. So it was really fun. He texts me dad jokes during the day, which is really great. So I started out in 2013 as a client associate, and I did a lot of back office filing, tax harvesting, client work. And so I worked there on and off throughout college, and I attended St. Joseph's University and actually graduated last September.
Congratulations.
Thank you. With a degree in finance and 2 minors in economics and history. And so I was rehired by Wells Fargo for their Associate Financial Advisor program, which is basically a training program for new financial advisors. And Wells Fargo is doing a fantastic job of investing in the next generation. And they put a lot of work into our training, and I suggested that I would like to go into retirement plan management. And so my dad added me as a second advisor to his business. And so I focus on retirement planning in terms of SEP IRAs, Simples, 401ks, 403bs.
And why did you pick retirement versus investment banking, where you could make boatloads of money from what we see on TV, right?
Actually, you and I were talking about that question earlier. It's fascinating. I originally wanted to be a history teacher, and I'm so passionate about teaching. And so when I was researching different aspects of the financial world, and one of the consistent articles I was reading was that 401k plans are a great idea, but the disconnect is in the education. And you can have this wonderful plan with great investments and amazing options. And if you're not communicating that well to plan participants, there's absolutely no point in having a plan. It's all about investor education and making people aware of what their options are.
I kind of remember, I don't know if you remember a corporate job, but my first one, you went in and they handed you that piece of paper, and then you just checked off and you wrote your percentages down. And my family worked in finance, so I would call my cousins and say, which ones do I do? And they'd say, read the list to me. And then they would literally just tell me what to check off.
You had that. I didn't even have that. And that was, maybe I'm dating myself, but I remember when we went from what was going to be, the company was managing the plan, and they said, good news, you're all going to be managing your retirement. I thought, oh, none of us are equipped to do this, so we did.
Managing your own retirement?
Meaning in terms of now you have these self-directed funds, and I knew nothing about
to know what
any
percentages
funds.
to pick.
I had
and
no
what,
idea
yeah.
what to pick. I had no idea there were certain things that you were going to be able to say, no, I want to invest in X industry. I'm like, I don't know, is that a good industry? So that was my first inclination. And I remember thinking, oh, if I have any money at retirement, this will be fabulous because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think the education component is really important, and I think it's made even more challenging now. We live in such volatile times where back when, in my day, when this was coming out to me, things were a little bit more predictable. It felt like, maybe that wasn't true, but they felt more predictable at that time. And so longevity was your friend. And now longevity, nobody knows. What's it going to be like in 10 years in
That's
investments?
actually fascinating that you should bring that up because my dad has a chart. It's a very old chart. It's from the Investment Company of America, which is part of American funds. And it's a chart of reasons not to invest.
Really?
Yes. So the ICA was a fund that was founded in the early part of the Great Depression, and the worst time to get into the market. And it goes through. It's grown over the years. If you had invested $10,000 back in 1932, you would have had 123 million today.
1932?
1932, which was
10,000?
10,000 to
Wow.
123 million.
Wow.
So with compounding, of course. But one of the fascinating things is that it goes through the time chart, and every 5-10 years there's a reason not to invest. Like there was the Great Depression, and then there was the crash after World War II, and then there was the Vietnam War, and then Korea, and the Gulf War, and then there was stagflation during the 70s, and then there was a crash in the 80s, and then there was the dot-com bubble, and then there was 2008. So throughout all of that, the market has steadily grown. So you talked about longevity, and it is about longevity. It's about buying and holding and investing and staying strong through those bad times. And I think that's really where the advisor adds value, because every time you see a plan participant saying, oh no, I can't invest, I need to put everything in bonds right now. It's like, well, no, wait a sec, you see where your investments have been before, let's take a look at that, let's analyze what your goals are, and just remain calm for now. And it's that one-on-one individual coaching that really adds value to the relationship.
So how does it work? Like my cousin used to do like mid-sized 401k sales in big corporations.
Okay.
You go in and you sell a team of 5 people. Like, what's your company size? No, what's the kind of company size you go after?
Generally 200 persons and under.
So how do you provide personal coaching when you're in a company 195 people?
The great thing we can do is we can ask the plan sponsors to say, hey, can you please set aside a time for me to sit down with these employees? I'd like to get everyone in a room together. I'd like to give a little bit of a presentation and then just step back and ask questions and let people ask questions. So they can say, hey, I see this fund is on the list. What does that mean? Or, hi, I have 5 kids. What should I be putting away now for their future? Or can you tack on a 529 to this plan? Which is something else we provide, and we provide coaching on 529 plans. But it's all about letting people talk to you about their individual situation. And the plan sponsors so far have done a fantastic job of giving us the time we need to sit down with people and really listen to them.
And can people call you? I'm a new employee at this company. I got this paperwork. I don't know what to pick.
So everyone, with the sheet that we hand out, everyone has my phone number. So they can call me at the office at any time. I'm
Don't
there.
you wish you had that? That would have been great. It's like a hotline to my cousin, right?
Exactly.
I'm there 8:30 to generally 5 or 6 at night, and so they can just pick up the phone and call me. I had one woman call me the other day. She wanted to change her target date fund, and she was on her portal. There's a login portal that you can go in and change your investment, and she called me and said, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? So we took about half an hour off. We walked her through it. We talked about the different investment options, and the great thing about the portals is that I can go on and see exactly what she's doing in real time.
Oh,
it's so cool. I love technology. Like,
that's
the
great.
advances are amazing. And so we walked her through the plan. She saved it. I printed it out. Everything is documented. And I sent her an email recording what we had done and the next steps she needs to take in order to make sure that this was accomplished.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I gotta say, our retirement plan is with some big impersonal organization. And I had a problem with it, and I didn't have a person that I could call. You know, you just get cycled through whoever picks up the 800 number, and there's a huge value to having the person on the other end of the phone that remembers you and can talk to you about what you're concerned about.
And the number one thing is people who remember you. So it's really nice when you call someone up and it's like, oh, hi, you know, Susan, I see that you have some changes in your, I don't know, not 529 plan, but a growth fund. I see this has been growing 5%, and I'd like to maybe talk to you about increasing your investments. And she can say, oh, well, it's not a good time right now. I'm saving for this, X, Y, Z. It's like, oh, okay, tell me about that. So it's that one-on-one connection that really, really, really makes it worth it.
So what can you sell people on top of their 401k? Because I understand there should be diversity in pre-tax savings, after-tax savings, and
So pre-tax saving, or after-tax saving, I should say, is called a Roth election, or a Roth 401k side benefit. So what that means is that, so I'm 23 right now, and I'm in a really low tax bracket because I live at home and don't pay property taxes. So if I want to put, 40% of my paycheck into my 401k, that gets taxed right now, and that money sits there and grows tax deferred. I mean, not tax deferred, after tax. So when I go to withdraw it at, say, age, 62, I can take that out and there's no taxes on it.
And that's if you put it in which vehicle?
Roth. It's a
Okay.
Roth election.
And what percentage are you allowed to put in? It's after tax, so I guess.
It is up to 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you can is there a cap on what you can put in your 401k?
Yes, there is a cap. So it's $55,000. You can put in before you're age 50, and then it's an extra $6,000 you can put in as a catch-up savings.
Per year?
Per year.
So you have a 23-year-old recent graduate who's making $35,000 a year, and they can put in the full 35.
I should say it's also 25%. It's capped at 25%.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Right.
I'm sorry. I always get the base numbers first. I'm like, wait, the percentages.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're almost out of time. Give me one tip that somebody should ask.
Someone should ask. How often can you speak to me? Really, it's when are you available? Like, can I just call you up? Someone should say to their plan advisor. So, say you're a plan participant. How can I call you? Can I have your number? Can I have your email address? Are you going to be there so I can contact you? Is really the most important thing, because you can have a million other questions about investing, and all of those are vitally important. But are you going to help me plan for my future? And are you going to make the time to do that?
That's really great. Thank you for being here. Really enjoyed our conversation. I'd like to go on for another hour. Instead, I need to tell you about next week. If you're going to join us, our next guest is Brad Wood. He's the co-founder of Gordian Knot Analytics Group, and I hope you'll join us again. Thank you for joining Money Matters.